What's going on, y'all? Good afternoon. Uh, y'all just watched the game. Let me go ahead and get this out of the way. This is the second year in a row I've watched coaching cost us a Washington game. I didn't think we were going to have a replay of last season, and we just really sat here and watched us have a replay of last season with one of the most boneheaded decisions that I think I've ever seen. And I mean, we've had some idiotic losses this season, but to simply be having all three timeouts, second to goal, under 50 seconds remaining in a ball game, and you come out and throw the ball, and then it happens to be picked off, is just inexcusable coaching right there. And I'm not, and I know everyone is kind of going, this is on Marcus Mariota, this is on Arthur Smith, this is actually on both of them. Deron Pay made a great play. However, you don't throw that football at that point in the game. You have all three timeouts. They don't have any way of stopping that play. And you find a way to lose a game that you had in the bag. It wasn't even, honestly, this was not a bad game either. Like, it was a physical game. It was a low-scoring game as you expected. Both teams were fighting for a playoff spot. But you happen to go out and have a most Falcon moment at the most inconvenient time. But I'm going to let my boy Mike hit it. Mike back on here with us. What's going on, Mike?
What's going on, Nate? So here's a few things I want to highlight about that last thing. The Falcons were averaging 5.75 yards per carry. They started on their own side of the field, got back. You know, Marcus Mariota, he made a good play outside of the pocket to a guy, Zacchaeus, and he ran for 44 yards. And that set it up. But outside of that play, it was based primarily off of running the ball. And so, you know what happened. You watch the game, threw the ball on second down. The Commanders had no more timeouts. The interception took place with 1:03. Why is that important? Because let's just say that gets deflected or you score, and Court Patterson reaches out, he catches that. That's a touchdown. They got a minute and 3 seconds to go down the field and score. Granted, this is not college where you can get saved by the first down, but a minute and 3 seconds is nothing. I know Taylor Heineke is not Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. Y'all saw that playoff game last year where they both went down there and scored 2 or 3 times within a minute and a half. But a minute and 3 seconds, that was just a bad. You should have ran the ball. We already knew that. We already know that. But you even if that was successful, you still leaving them with over a minute left to go back down the field and score. And we know we've seen some things with the Falcons trying to hold leads over the last couple of years. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that they could have went down there with a minute and scored. I don't know, man.
I don't even know what they were thinking right there on second down and goal. Like you said, the pick happened with a minute and 3 left. The fact that you even ran the ball was dumb within itself when you still had all of your timeouts. Because the reality is you run the ball, I don't care if you get a yard or 2, you still got 2 timeouts in your back pocket. So let's say you get a run for 2 yards and it's like third down and maybe 4, or third down and, it was third down and 3 or 2. You still can run clock. The fact that you sat there and when it threw the ball, as you said, number one, even if they knock the ball down, that ball is going to be incomplete. So you still had all 3 timeouts. Even if you go and score again, they have at least 50-something seconds probably to score a touchdown and possibly, or not bad, to kick a field goal to win the game because it would have been a 1-point lead. But you didn't even give yourself an opportunity on that. And that's what we have an issue with right now. You got down the field, like Mike said, they were averaging almost 6 yards a carry, moving the ball consistently. And before we even went on air, I was telling the people I was watching the game with, don't give them the ball back. You run that clock. You took their 2 timeouts away. You did smart coaching to go out here and do some Falcon coaching. That's the best way to put it, because that was dumb. That right there can cost the Falcons a shot at the postseason. And let's get real about this thing. No, I don't think the Falcons are a threat in the playoffs. Let me get that out of the way. But the simple fact is this: if you win that ball game, you're 6-6 with Pittsburgh coming to town next week, who is in a rebuild. Honestly, if we're going to be honest about this thing, you would have had a 1-up on Washington, Seattle, and you would have had a 1-up on the 49ers, who are all competing for the 7th seed right now. But you blew it by one of the most idiotic play calls of this season. You don't know how the rest of your season could go. And you need wins like that, considering the fact, yes, you got Pittsburgh and a bye to the New Orleans Saints. After those 3, you have the Ravens in Baltimore. You have Arizona, who I don't care what their record is. That team still got Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt. They still got a squad. And then the last game of the season, you got Tampa Bay at home, who, by the way, is in a tie game with Cleveland. What if happens if they lose this ball game? You could have been in first place. But you cost yourself by making one of the dumb decisions of the season by going ahead, throwing the ball. You don't trust Marcus Mariota to throw the ball 95% of the time. So why you trust him to throw the ball on 2nd down and go at the freaking 4-yard line? And let me make this clear too. I'm not sitting here blaming Marcus Mariota for the loss, because it's actually one of his best games of the year, considering the circumstances. That was a dumb decision on everybody involved in that party. Mike, how do you feel about that?
Man, I agree with everything you said. What makes matters worse is, I know we touched on this. Let's just say you run the ball like you beat everybody, even Commanders fans, we can't stop y'all. You know, he got cute. You know, sometimes coordinators or coaches, they want to be cute. Go back to the Patriots in the
I think he's having some technical difficulty, guys. He's having some technical difficulties. Let's see if he come back. You good, bro? Because it was going in and out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we still here.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, good. Like I was saying, you know, sometimes coaches get cute. You know, back to that Super Bowl with the Patriots and Seahawks. Just hand the ball to beast mode. You got a Super Bowl, but you got cute, and we know the end result right here. Even worst case scenario, let's say you get stopped. You know, you still had the 3 timeouts. You know, anything could happen. But even let's say we don't get the roughing the punter, we still got to go 50 yards. If we got still timeouts.
All right, guys, he got to try to figure out this connection real quick. I hate that this cut now because he's actually making a very good point right now. But until he come back, let me hit these comments real quick. Dean Salone said, "Dang, Coach Smith, why the HE double hockey says we didn't run the ball to keep the possession going? That would have led to us getting in the end zone." That's why I am frustrated with the Falcons right now. Because number one, you sat here and put yourself in a predicament where, let me bring Mike back to the stream, guys. There he goes. You put yourself in a predicament where the Falcons could have closed the game out with a simple touchdown. But at the end of the day, they have no times. They can't do anything to stop the clock. It's essentially was the Detroit game 2 years ago. And I'm sure a lot of you remember Todd Gurley mistakenly fell in the end zone for the go-ahead lead. But in this case, nobody can prevent anything from going the direction that it did. So why he made this decision is going to be a baffling one that he's going to have a hard time explaining. And again, for a team that is trying to compete and possibly make a playoff run that was unexpected, you might have just cost them the season with that decision right there. Because again, for anybody that's watching the game that's trying to say that we're discrediting Daron Payne, no, Daron Payne made an outstanding play on that ball. Again, you don't put your team in that position when they have one of the best defensive lines in the league. Daron Payne is a top-tier D tackle. Jonathan Allen's a top-tier D tackle. Montez Sweat's a top-tier DN. You don't put yourself in that predicament. That's what's so frustrating about this loss. Mike, what do you think about that comment? See if you good to go down.
Man, calls like that can, you know, I've talked about how Arthur Smith has followed her hard nose. You remember what happened shortly after that Super Bowl call by Pete Carroll? They love Pete Carroll, but shortly after that call, they kind of he started getting some pushback. They was like, "Oh, you want your guy to get all the glory and stuff, and you put us in a bad situation. You lost us that game." I'm not saying that's going to happen here, but you gotta think that in the back of some of the players' minds, they're like, "Coach took the game out of our hands. Like, you did something that you didn't have to do. You made a bad call. Like, after we had got to stop on 4th down, forced the punt, we had gotten all the way down here from starting on our own 20, 22-yard line all the way down here to the 4-yard line with a chance to win the game, bleed the clock where they don't have any time to go back down there and score. And we're going to be 6-6 with an opportunity to be in first place if the Browns could have beaten the Bucs. At the very least, we're still in the thick of that last playoff spot in the NFC. And now it's going to be an uphill battle, you know.
Yes, it is.
Like Nate said, we had a perfect opportunity next week to beat the Steelers at home. And now it's kind of like almost every game is almost a must win for here on out.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Let's see. Buddy, what's going on, bro? What's going on, man? Good to see you check in.
My guy.
KD says free Ritter, man. I'm going to be honest with you. At this rate, we lose another game, I think Ritter is going to be out there starting because that's going to essentially kick your playoff shot out. So you got to get the man a shot at some point. But it's sad because, like I said, I don't want to sit here and bash Mariota 100% because he was not the full blame of this loss. That was a bad decision from a veteran quarterback. But at the same time, again, these are the things that could cost you a season. You already are on borrowed time because we drafted Desmond Ritter in his 3rd round. So why blow your opportunity like that? You might have just cost yourself a legit shot at the postseason. Let's see, boy, y'all boys going in for real. Listen, this is a very irritating about this loss. I'm not even gonna lie. I know Mike feels the same, but this is one of the most this is irritating to say the least. Let's see. AJ Evans said, to quote Richard Sherman, run the ball. We don't trust Mariota to throw. We have a top run block unit while a poor pass blocking line, and we ran for over 7 yards a carry. That's the best comment right there to make because you absolutely are correct. You do not put yourself in a predicament to try to throw for the win when you don't have to. You didn't have to do it. Algier was taking guys with him. Patterson was taking guys with him. Huntley, when he got in the game, was taking guys with him. Mariota's read option was always like a block away from breaking for a big play.
The thing about it is, I'm sorry to cut you off, Nate, but the thing that even when they was getting hit in the backfield, they was still dragging them for a yard or two.
Yes. I don't get it. I don't know how Arthur Smith is going to explain this one. I don't know. I really don't know, guys. I don't really know. And let's go to this comment. Dunn has told us up, bro. He said losing another winnable ball. Bro, this right here is the commentators showed that the Falcons have played in 9 one-score games. We have played 12 games with 9 of them within a score. We're 4-5 in one-score games. Just think about, you can go back and look at the games that we blew. The Chargers game a couple weeks ago here in Atlanta on the Taquan Graham fumble. Today, the Saints that won the game against the Saints. Them 3 games right there, the bad call at Tampa. Oh, and just to give you guys an update, I'm actually looking at the screen. Cleveland has drove 1st and goal at the 1 with less than a minute left. So the Falcons, unfortunately, won't be out of the division race because Cleveland probably going to kick a game with a field goal and the Falcons be a game out of first place. So
the crazy thing is what I was talking to Nate before we went on air, and I was just like, at this point, because we want to see what Ritter has, we use draft capital on him, high draft capital. At this point, I just wanted, maybe it was out of my head, maybe Tampa Bay just put us out of our misery and start going on a winning streak, but they can't even do right. So it's just like, Man.
This makes it more sickening that Tampa's going to probably lose this game to Cleveland, because if you close your game out, you're in first place. You're 6-6 in first place. So now the Falcons have put themselves in a predicament where you could have picked the game up on Tampa Bay going into next week against Pittsburgh. You blew that opportunity. So that's so frustrating by the Falcons. Kevin Kendall's up, bro, said, I hate when coach goes against his philosophy. It costs us every single time. It's mind-blowing. He did the same thing last year. Against the same opponent. That's the crazy thing about it. The Falcons could have ran the ball. Cordero Patterson cut up on Washington last season. Had, I think, a 3-touchdown day. And we put the ball back in the hands of the Washington Commanders, and they won the game. Today, you throw the ball. Like, what are you even thinking? Who possessed you to call that run? I'm so irritated right now. And I said I wasn't going to get frustrated if the Falcons lost close, because it was a real physical game. Washington was just as physical as we were all game. But you had the game won. Like, I'm upset.
What you think about this, Nate? You elect to pass the ball, something that you haven't had great success with all year, even today. Keep in mind, you got 45 yards on that same drive. Before that pass on the last drive, we only had 123 passing yards at the time. So we hadn't been successful throwing the ball. And that's what I meant by earlier, where I was like, it has to be in the back of the players' minds, like, coach took the game out of our hands. Like, you have been running the ball effectively all day long, even when they knew you would run the ball. And then you got cute. And like Kevin said, you went against your whole philosophy. That has to be in the back of the players' minds, and they got to sit with that for a whole week until they get back on the field. But that's going to be tough to, I'm interested to see what he says during the post-game interview.
Me too. And it's an uphill climb now for the Falcons, because if you win this game, you put the Commanders at 6-6. The Commanders have 2 games with the Giants coming up. They got the Browns later in the season. They got the 49ers, who's also in the wild card race, and they got Dallas week 18 in Dallas. So again, their schedule is sort of brutal down the stretch, considering their division right now and considering other circumstances. You just cost yourself the opportunity to possibly win this, to go ahead in this division. So I'm just disgusted right now, because Arthur Smith is going to go back and kick himself looking at several games this season. And right now you're 5-7. If Tampa somehow loses this game, unfortunately, you're still from the division race. But here goes another issue. If the Saints go to San Francisco and steal a win, they're now in second place, and we're in third. You just cost yourself an opportunity where you got to wish on everybody else to win the game, and that's ridiculous at this point. The division's already bad. It's just, oh my God, man. It's hard to sit here and not really go in on this team right now, because this is bad. That was a bad loss.
It also highlighted what we spoke about last week. We were talking about our receivers and how the impact of a lack of Kyle Pitts. And, we brought up a lot of mock drafts, and they all said the guy for Joe Addison from USC at receiver. And when you look at this game, if you take away that on that last drive, the 45-yard pass and reception by Zacchaeus, our leading receiver would have been Zacchaeus with 39 yards. And Zacchaeus dropped the easy pass that would have been a first down in the third quarter. And Drake London dropped the pass that would have been close to being the first down, and we had to end up punting. Washington got the ball, went down, kicked the field goal, and Drake London was nowhere to be found today. He only had 4 targets, but Cordell Patterson had more targets than him, and he spent most of the day in the backfield. And it was like, Drake London, this was your opportunity to be, okay, I'm the number 1 receiver, and you didn't do it. And so that was disappointing.
On side note, the Browns just scored a game-winning touchdown. They beat the Buccaneers. So the Falcons, in the most weirdest way possible, are still a game out of first place, which is very embarrassing to even talk about. This makes that loss even more sickening because the Falcons have been tied for first place right now. That makes this game even more frustrating. It makes it even more frustrating at this point. Amy, that's exactly how I feel right now. That's exactly how I feel right now doing this stream. That's exactly how I feel. AJ also said, I don't blame Mariota on the throw. If Payne was grounded, that would have been a yes, that is true too. He was wide open on the play. I will agree with that. I just don't agree with the decision of throwing right at that moment. Because once again, you still only up one. They still would have had about a minute left. And with a minute in our secondary, anything is possible. Anything is possible. We are liable to go out there and give up a 3rd and 60 if you allow us. So I want to put that back on the defense. Although the defense did enough to keep us in the game, I will give them that. But again, they won the game for you by getting the stop. It's up to you to close the game out. That's up to you.
The Commanders have a pretty much all pro-ish type receiver and Terry McLaurin, but he only had 48 receiving yards. He only had 6 targets, only 4 receptions. What that means is the Commanders saw that they could run the ball and move the ball effectively on the ground, and that's how they ran the offense. Did they stray away from, do we have this great receiver over here? We're not going to force feed him just because we have him and we know he'll probably be open 8 or 9 times out of 10. We're going to run the ball with our 3rd round pick, Brian Robinson. We're going to run the ball with our other running backs. And I think they rushed for like 5.9 yards per carry. Brian Robinson had his first career 100-yard rushing yard day. And that maybe the Falcons can look to that and be like, okay, they have a top 15-ish receiver that they probably had open on a couple of plays, but they elected to keep the ball on the ground, and they won the game. And this Arthur Smith he's a young coach, head coach, and this is something he's going to have to wear. I'm putting the blame solely on him. Could the defense have been better? Yes. Could Mariota had made a few more plays? Probably. Could the receivers have gotten open or caught the ball? They had several drops. He only had 10 incompletions. One of them was that interception, but a couple were drops. Right. It's a team loss, but at the end of the day, you were still in a position to win because the players played it well enough, and your coach took the game out of your players' hands. It is what it is. That's what it is. That's what happened.
That's a great way to put it. That's a great way to put it because I feel the same way. I feel like Arthur Smith tried to dial up something that was totally unnecessary. He did not need to call a pass play at that point in the game. I don't know if you was trying to show everybody, look at what I did with Marcus Mariota. He was already having a good game. He's a dual threat quarterback. You did not need to sit there and force it into the end zone for that to even take place. And like you said, Mike, the bad part about it is this was a physical ball game. I think Brian Robinson might know him very well. He's a Bama fan. He's seen him a lot. Ran for 105 yards today. He absolutely destroyed our defensive line outside of Grady. And I even said during the game, I posted on my social media that the Falcons' number one need might be a defensive lineman to go aside Grady Jarrett, because that's essentially where you lost the game today, because the Commanders decided we're not going to even throw the ball much. We're going to pound this rock. We're going to make them stop us on the ground. And it worked well for them. They basically came out and played Falcon football against the Falcons. And it was the Falcons did enough to could possibly escape with a victory, but your coach took the game out your hand. It's just, oh my God.
Hey, listen, you saw how disruptive Daron Payne was today, right? I had mentioned in a little private group chat before, like in October, I had put in there an article that said Deron Payne was on the trade block because they didn't know if they were going to be able to pay him. And they just drafted Fedarian Mathis out of Alabama last year, who had a season-ending injury. And I'm looking at the article again now. That's on CBS and NFL Trade Rumors. They were looking for a day 2 pick for Deron Payne to a second or a third or fourth round pick in combination to have his services. I don't think they better pay that man because he was disruptive all game long. But I will say, if he can be had for that in the offseason, Falcons need to look into that to pair him with Grady Jarrett.
I agree 100%. And he won the game for him. To me, he won the game for him. He got that big sack when it was tied, when it was a 3-point game that essentially got the ball back to the Commanders where they went up 6. He got the tip to set up the Kendall Fuller pick to win the game. He stepped up when it mattered the most. Unfortunately, the Falcons don't have the same on their side of the ball where he can make – Grady is Grady, but you don't have another guy who can make that play when you need him to because they're double teaming Grady all day and making the other D tackles beat them who are getting whooped game by game by game by game. So those are things that the Falcons will have to address this offseason. And again, let me get this company real quick. What's going on, bro? It's every game is the same thing. Yeah, it's the same story every game. He said, how are we bro? We are the most competitive, worst team I've ever seen in my life. That's the best way to put it. We're the most competitive, worst team I've seen in my life. They will compete their butt off in every game, but it's always that 1 or 2 boneheaded decisions that will cost them a win. They've been the Falcons haven't been in a game that wasn't one score since the Bengals blowout. The Panthers game was a 1-score win. The Chargers game was a 1-score loss. Carolina game that they lost in Charlotte was a 1-score game that they made it. The Panthers put it out of reach late in that 4th quarter. Last week was a 1-score victory against the Bears. Today is another 1-score loss. You're losing the close games. If the ball bounces the other way, who knows what position you'll be in? You might be running away with the NFC South right now. But see, these are the differences between a good team and a bad team. This is a bad team that competes their butt off. That's just the best way to put it right now.
I got a question for you, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
Is Drake London receiver 1?
He's receiver 1, but the problem with the situation in Atlanta is you don't have a quarterback that can consistently get him the ball, and then you don't have a coach that fully trusts his quarterback. He don't trust his quarterback arm because a lot of times Drake London is left one-on-one. Drake London's coming out making plays where he's open on the play, but they're not concerned about it because they know he ain't gonna throw the ball anyways.
So I got a follow-up statement to that. I asked that question because although we started off the year 1-2, Drake London was heavily involved in those first 3 games. Let me run it down. The first game against the Saints, 5 receptions, 74 yards, an average of 14.8 per catch. Against the Rams, Jalen Ramsey and company, when the Rams were still the Rams and healthy. 8 receptions, 86 yards, 10 yards per catch, and a touchdown. Against Seattle, 6 targets, 3 receptions, 18 yards per reception, 54 yards, and a touchdown. That is very productive. And I'm looking at it. After that, he had 5 catches. I'm going to go with targets. 7 targets, 12 targets, 6 targets. And now he had 1 target against the Bengals. He had 3 targets against the Bears. Like, man. And that just goes to what you said about the offense and the quarterback we have. We're kind of limited. So I feel like he has the talent to be receiver 1, but it's tough right now.
I agree 100%. And I'm sure everybody that's tuning in keeps seeing me shake my head. I can't get over the fact that the coach took that game from us. Again, we have entered this season with 0 expectations for the Atlanta Falcons, but the coach cost another ball game. And don't get me wrong, Arthur Smith's not a bad coach. I'm going to make that clear too. He's not a bad coach. It's dumb decision making like this that will cost you in the end. And today, you're thankful that the Falcons are in. You're thankful that the division's that is as bad as it is, because at this point, the Buccaneers could have essentially put this division away if they would have won that game in Cleveland. But now you're hanging around. But at this point, let me make this clear. You have to win the Pittsburgh and the New Orleans games to have any shot at this NFC South. If your mindset is making the playoffs, you have to win the next 2 games. You got a bye week in between, but those next 2 games are essential. You lose one of those 2 games, put Desmond Ridder in. Let's not even waste time going through this thing, because at the end of the day, you still have to think about your off season. You still have to think about your plans past 2022. You got to have money to work with. All that dead Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Deion Jones, all that cap room is going to be back in your pocket now. So you got to find out. And yes, he may have he got 3 tough games at the back end. If, let's say, if the Falcons was to win the Pittsburgh game, lose at New Orleans, you got 3 tough games on the back end. But guess what? You would rather give him the reps when you possibly can, because it is clear as day. This is not a Marcus Mariota bashing thing. He don't trust his quarterback to air the ball out. Matt, let me throw this out here to you guys that want to say that it's all about because Mariota's a mobile quarterback. Matt Ryan threw for almost 4,000 yards in this offense last season. A washed Matt Ryan. So you can miss me on the simple fact that they're not trying to look at this thing from he's going to fit his quarterback strengths. That's the thing that's falling into place right now. And I actually touched on the comment that's later down in this stream. Mike, how do you feel about that comment right there? Is it time for a quarterback change?
You know, at the beginning of the season, I said we're going to be in a 3-game stretch where if we're still in contention, then that would determine if there would be time for a quarterback change. That stretch has come and passed. That stretch was where we had the Panthers twice in 3 weeks, sandwiched in between with the Bears. So we went 2-1 in that stretch. 2-1. And we're a game out of first place. I'm gonna say something that a lot of people may not agree with. And I don't even know if I'm gonna agree with it later on tonight. I think it's hard. The coaches know, the players know. If you go in that locker room, they know who Desmond Ridder is, what he can do. So it's true. So me speaking from the outside looking in, I'm gonna say you go ahead and change quarterbacks now. I'm gonna say that because, and I've been the one of the loudest Mariota supporters all year, saying it's not him. You know, he makes bad plays sometimes, but he makes some great plays sometimes. It's not all on him. And this is not an indictment on Marcus Mariota. This is more so me looking at it from the standpoint of, I'm like 97% sure that Marcus Mariota will be cut. He won't be on this team next year. So you got 5 games left. You're 5-7. Yes, you're still a half game out of first place in your division. And I know this might sour people within your fan base. It might even upset players in that locker room. But I don't think it will, because like I said, they know who Desmond Ridder is and what he can do. They've seen him. I don't think it can get much worse. You may have a few rookie mistake turnovers now, but at least you have 5 games to determine if Desmond Ridder is your quarterback. Then you can use that draft capital or scour the trade market or whatever to find your quarterback. But you can't go into the offseason with a losing record and then go into let's say we're in contention until the last week of the season. Marcus Mariota is still your quarterback. We lose the last game of the season and we miss the playoffs. Now you don't know what you have with Desmond Ridder. He has no game experience. So again, this is not an indictment on Marcus Mariota. I believe he should still be the quarterback. He's made enough plays to this point to where I'm not complaining. I'm complaining about that I know we shouldn't be 5-7, but that's not solely on him. It's been a combination of things. But I do not want to get to the last game of the season where we have a chance to make the playoffs and we don't make the playoffs, and we've gone an entire season without seeing what Desmond Ridder can do with this offense. And now you have even more question marks. And that's gonna be within the heads of the front office the entire summer, off season. Do we know what we have with him? And then what happens if you don't know and you go and draft a quarterback in the first round? Keep in mind, I said we could still be in contention to that final game, which means we're not going to have a top 10 draft pick more than likely, which means the top tier quarterbacks will be removed from the board. So now you're going to go and try to draft another project. And now you got 2 projects on your team. And you're like, that could be another wasted season next year if you do something like that. So I think he has to get into the game now. You got 5 games. See what he has. I know it's going to upset some fans because you're half a game out of the first place in the division. But would you rather miss out on the playoffs this year, or would you rather have a wasted season next year because you're trying to see which project quarterback is your quarterback of the future?
That's a good point that you just made. That's a good point that you just made. He also said he agrees that we need to play him. That's a good point that you just made, and I didn't even really look at it that way. I was more so that he was going to roll them against Pittsburgh, and then if we lose that game, possibly that you give them the last 4 games. But I can agree with that 100% because, number one, Pittsburgh's coming in with Kenny Pickett. They're already starting to work on giving their guy a chance. And at this point, you don't draft a quarterback at any point in the draft to be a backup. And as you said, Mike, for everyone that is Falcon fans that pay attention to the cap, that pay attention to a lot of things that we talk about, Marcus Mariota is $12 million against the cap with no penalty next season. They will be cutting that contract regardless. I think that money is going to be back in our hands this offseason. Like Mike said, you don't want to put yourself in a predicament where you don't know if we have a good quarterback in 2023 and go out here and put another good draft together, and then the quarterback is the downfall of the 2023 Falcons. And the truth be told is, look at the state of the division. New Orleans is old. They're going to be getting ready to rebuild that thing within the next year. They don't have a first, so they're going to probably be making they may be blowing it up this offseason. And that's the God honest truth for anybody that's a Saints fan that's watching. Carolina is Carolina. We don't know what in the world they're doing. They don't even know what they're doing. Let's just be honest about this thing. I know Panther fans are saying that they could be trending up. I'm just going to go ahead and say, you don't know what you're doing either. Let's go ahead and put that out of the way. But that's not a bad thing because the division is so up for grabs. And Tampa is even older in the division. Tom Brady's probably going to retire after the year. So now you find yourself in a predicament where the whole division is kind of in a makeover stage. It's kind of in a change stage. So you don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball because at the end of the day, if you ask me, Atlanta and Carolina are a little further ahead in the consideration of the rebuild than the other 2 teams are in the division. So knowing that you are kind of in that predicament, you do have to start looking into what do we have in Desmond Ridder? What do we have? Because as myself and Mike has even agreed too, I don't think quarterback is our first pick in the draft in April regardless. But at the same time, you got to know what is the flaws of Ridder. You need to see some tape on him so you can say he's great at this, he's not good at this. He's good at this, he's not good at that. But you're getting to a situation where it's 5 games left in the season, and Marcus Mariota, let's go ahead and get it out of the way. He is not the future of the Atlanta Falcons. We knew that coming in. This was his show me one more season. Can we roll with you and let Ridder learn up under you? But at this point, I think it's now that opportunity to give it a shot because I don't want to sit here and say by essentially, like Mike said, it's going to ruffle some feathers. God honest truth. It's going to ruffle some feathers because some fans are going to say, we're still in playoff contention. Why are you going to go with the rookie now? At the end of the day, you're 5-7. 5-7 with 5 games left. You're 5-7 with 5 games left. I don't care about what the division says. Let's be real. If the Falcons somehow won the division, we're getting smacked by Dallas. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. Whoever's the 5th seed is gonna come in here and cut a clown in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's the truth. So when it comes down to it, if Desmond Ridder is your future, you want him to get that chemistry with Drake London. You don't know when Kyle Pitts is gonna come back. He may not be back for the rest of the season. So you kind of want to start gaining some chemistry with that guy. You want to start to find out before it gets too late in the season, like Mike said, and it's just you now like, okay, we don't know what we got at quarterback, because that's what we came into this season. We didn't know what we had at quarterback with Marcus Mariota. He didn't really get chemistry because Ridder got all the snaps in the preseason. Mariota came in like for a drive here, to drive there, and then he sat down. So really, he was playing into contention to an extent. But also, he's made decisions that hasn't been the best decisions. Let's just be honest about it. But I do agree. It could be time for Arthur Smith. And I'm going to go ahead and throw this right here. If I'm the front office, it's time to have that conversation with Arthur Smith. Because let me go ahead and say this too. Terry Fontenot is not a bad GM. I see some potential in guys that we've picked. Troy Anderson is going to be the future middle linebacker of this team. Evan Kate is going to be the future DN of this team. D'Angelo Malone shows promise. You got guys throughout the roster that they've drafted in the first 2 seasons. Richie Grant's a pretty good safety. You got guys throughout the roster that are young, that has potential to really thrive long-term for this team. But again, do you want to lose your job because your head coach wants to stick to this veteran that he worked with in Tennessee? Or do you want to go ahead and start saying, we need to see what we got long-term, Art? What do we got long-term? This is a rebuild plan that we're putting together. You don't want to put yourself behind the 8 ball because you're trying to be loyal to Marcus Mariota. So that's a great point, Mike. Very good point.
Yeah, man. I'll let you read the comment first before I go.
Okay. The next comment said, I also think we need another good corner. I do agree 100%. I think that AJ Terrell is an absolutely outstanding corner. That's why myself and Mike talked about this on the post game for the Chicago show, that if Keely Ringo fell to 15, or the best corner on the board, like a Cam Smith from South Carolina, fell at 15, you take him and pair him up with AJ Terrell, because at the end of the day, you need a game changer also on defense, whether it's adding at D tackle or corner. But I'm going to let you go ahead, Mike, because I know you get ready to get into the comment real quick.
You know, certain teams are developed. We have certain tiers. You know, coming into the season, although we all were around the same threshold as far as like wins, we thought the Falcons were right there. We're right there on pace. We said 8 or 9, 5 games left. They can get to that and even more. But teams have tiers for themselves, and they have to be realistic. So prior to the season, you know, front offices around the league, you got Kansas City, the Bills, etc. Those teams were like in a tier of, we're contending for a championship. Then you have another tier of teams. They're like, okay, we're close, but let's see if we can win the division this year. Teams like that, probably the Chargers, probably the Browns. They're like, all right, we know we're not going to have our QB1 for most of the year, but we have a pretty solid core around us. Let's see if we can contend with the division until we get Deshaun Watson. Then you have teams at the back end are like, okay, we're in a rebuild. You know, we're not going to win this year. We have no expectations of winning this year. We get to a certain point in the season, we're not going to be shy to tell you that we're tanking. Teams like the Texans. But then you have teams that's kind of in the middle where they're in a developmental stage. They're not really rebuilding, but they're trying to develop the players they have to see if, okay, we're going to have to go to a rebuild, or are we going to push to that division contender range? That's where you had a team like maybe like the Panthers. They didn't come into the season rebuilding or saying we're gonna rebuild, but they still had Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, etc. But they were like, if things break our way, we might can contend for the division, but we're not necessarily rebuilding. They didn't come to the season like we're gonna fire Matt Rule. The Falcons are in that developmental stage. They have an influx of new faces, new energy coming into the organization. They still have those vets like Grady Jarrett, like Jake Matthews. But because you're in that developmental stage and it's this late in the season, you have to think about the long-term view. You can't be emotional about this. You can't be like, okay, we're one game out. You can't, because if that's the case, like I said earlier, you're going to be every week, well, one game out. Hey, we're just one game out. And you're going to get to the end of the year where we're one game out. But what if you don't catch that break that one game at the end of the year? Now, you have to determine now that, hey, we've had a great season. We're not saying the season is over by any stretch of the meat because we believe in Desmond Ridder. We believe that when we insert him into the starting lineup, we're going to continue to get better and better and better. But you can't wait. I emphasize you can't wait. I don't even want to get to a 4-game stretch where we're like, okay, we lose to the Steelers and we got a 4-game stretch to see what Desmond has. That is an immense amount of pressure for a guy that you drafted in the 3rd round. For any rookie to be like, you have a 4-game showing to be like, oh, if you do well, you may be our quarterback of the future. But if you do poorly, yeah, we're probably going to seek other alternatives. That's not fair to him. That's not fair to put a 4-game stretch for the rest of your season to determine if you're going to make the playoffs on a rookie. And so I really hope that we do the right thing because I don't want to get down to week 15, 16, 17. We're just now inserting him into the lineup and expecting him to play like he's Joe Montana. Like, we got to do the right thing. If this decision is going to impact our offseason, is going to impact our season next year. So I hope Terry and the guys, they get it right because they're teetering on they got a thin line right now, and you don't want to mess this up. You've done well to this point since you've been hired, both of you. But if you make a mistake, it can go down south really quick.
I agree. And you don't want to put yourself where the things that you have been putting in motion as far as this developmental stage of this team is blown because you wait too late to make this one decision. Like, I salute them for moving the Julio contract back last season when they did it, moving Matt Ryan when they did it. Like, you've been doing the necessary things. Don't stunt your progression because you're trying to give this one guy a shot because you're around a playoff picture. Technically, we were around a playoff picture last year with Matt Ryan, but then the season just wasn't meant to be. But at the end of the day, you don't want to sit here and you didn't have a backup rookie quarterback that was capable of potentially leading your future. Nobody in their right mind thought Felipe Franks was going to be the franchise quarterback by any means last season. So you don't draft a Desmond Ridder to say you come in to back up for 2 to 3 years and then go get another quarterback. That'd be so dumb to draft another quarterback when you just drafted one this offseason. Matter of fact, you were the second team throughout the entire draft, minus just the 3rd round, to draft a quarterback. So you don't want to put yourself in that predicament. But let me show some of these statistics real quick as far as the game. Let me pull this up. Again, if y'all been tuning throughout this whole show, man, we appreciate y'all tuning in for real because this was a frustrating loss. Definitely a frustrating loss for the Falcons on all levels. Okay, let's go back to the point, this full screen. As you can see, let me take this comment down real quick. Marcus Mariota was 15 of 25 for 174 yards, 1 touchdown, that interception at the end. The offensive line had a pretty good day at the office. They only gave up 1 sack, which was the sack that was on the drive, which they were down 3. Had a QB rating of 77.8. Taylor Heineke was 14 of 23 for 138, 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. Also, as you see,
get the best deals on eyewear with over 3,000 styles starting at $6 only at iBuyDirect.com.
My apologies. Okay, So the Falcons, when the Commanders were actually pretty even on the ground. The Commanders had 37 for 176. The Falcons had 29 for 167 on the ground. And they were averaging 5 yards a carry. As you saw, Algier led the team in rushing. Cordero Patterson had 52. Mariota had 49 himself. Caleb Huntley only had 1 carry. But as you see, the production on the ground. Also for the Commanders, Brian Robinson Jr., the rookie out of Alabama, had a tremendous day at the office. 18 for $105.
Get the best deals on eyewear with over 3,000 styles starting at $6 only at iBuyDirect.com.
They're showing all the highlights of the game. That's what's killing me right now. My bad, everyone. Okay, going back, as Mike mentioned, Zacchaeus led the team in receiving, had 5 catches for 91 yards. Drake London was 2 for 29. Cordero Patterson had 3 catches. First had 1 key catch down the scene. I think it was on a drive that cut the lead. As you also can see, Terry McLaurin was held to 4 for 48. No Curtis Samuel was not productive at any means today. And De'Ami Brown had 1 catch in the first quarter. So the defense did enough to possibly win you the ball game. No fumbles. Rashaan Evans led the team in tackles. Michael Walker had a pretty good day at the office today. Had 2 passes deflected. Derek Forrest had 11 tackles. Jamie Davis had 10. As you see, stats kind of pretty balanced on both sides. So both teams had an interception throughout the game. Yongo missed that field goal before the half, which was kind of a long distance for him. So can't really fault him too much for it. As you see the standings over here, the Bucs are 5-6. The Falcons are 5-7 right now. New Orleans is playing at San Francisco. At the moment, they are currently 4-7. As again, that game is pending. Carolina's 4-8 at the moment with a win over Tampa. So that's kind of keeping them in the race as well. But as you see the score, we hit on the score real quick. But let's go back to me and Mike and Tevin. What's going on, bro? He hit a comment. He said Mariota's holding the offense back. Got to be the worst starting quarterback in the league. Defense is holding to a T. The defense had a good day. I'm not going to knock them too much. I mean, they got gas on the ground, but they were bend but don't break. And unfortunately, it comes down to really being limited because there are certain throws they don't trust Mariota to make at this point. And I think that goes kind of to the decisions that we're talking about right now, where we could possibly be moving on from Marcus or could be looking into starting a Ritter at some point. Mike, what's your thoughts on that comment?
I agree. While they have played well enough, again, because I say this because I support Mariota. I appreciate what he's done, but even when we throw the ball downfield, have you noticed? I would like to say I don't have this stat or anything in front of me, but I would say 85% of our passes downfield come off a play action or some variation of a play action. And that's not going to cut it sometimes. I get that we're a run first team, so you want to soften the secondary because you got them coming up. They're tempted to come up and help out with the front 7. But if you notice, even to this game, when we had a play action, we had people downfield open, but we didn't throw it either because they got covered, or like he would check down to the running back in the flat or a receiver coming across on a crosser, and for like minimal gain. So even when we want to take a shot play, we're not taking shot plays, and he doesn't throw the best deep ball in the world, but it's a capable deep ball. Either he's not going to throw a deep ball and it'll be an interception. He's going to throw a deep ball and he might throw it 10 yards away from the receiver, but you got to take those shots and you can't be afraid to it. And I think what it is, I think sometimes he doesn't even trust his own self. He doesn't want to make a mistake. And you got to cut it loose because you're hurting the team. Because when the coaches don't call a deep pass every play. We know that. Something I heard last night during the Alabama game was they said of Bill O'Brien. They were like, Bill O'Brien would call shot plays for Bryce Young with the mindset that receiver that they want open for a 40 or 50-yard pass, he won't always be open. But he's trusting Bryce Young to be like, okay, it's not open, so I'm going to check it down. But sometimes you got to take that, because the more times you take it or the more times you check down, that's gonna impact whether the offensive coordinator is going to call those shots. And if you notice, we don't call shots often. You have to keep the defense honest. I get it. That they know we're going to run the ball and we still going to run it. I get it. But in games like this, you had opportunities to throw the ball downfield and you didn't take advantage of those opportunities. You still had a chance to win the game. I get it. But to Tevin's comment, and just like everybody else's comment, you have to take chances. We are 5-7. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that you're going to throw an interception, the game's going to be over? We're 5-7. We're not chasing the Miami Dolphins undefeated streak of going undefeated. We're not trying to protect a division lead. We're not in the playoffs. We're not in the NFC Championship with 5 minutes left with a 5-point lead or a 5-point deficit with a chance to go to the Super Bowl. You can't play passive when you're 5-7, 5-6 going into the game. At this point, you're a veteran. The coach is going to call the plays for you. If it's not there, check down. But the coach is not going to continue to call you deep balls if he calls 7 per game and you don't take any of them.
I agree. And at this point, Marcus Mariota, you've been in the league for 7 seasons. You got drafted as the number 2 pick in the 2015 NFL draft. I don't have no more. My leash is short for him at this point, because at this point you are what you're going to be in this league. So I do agree with you, Tevin, about Mariota holding the offense back. I think we do need to give a chance to Desmond Ridder before it's all said and done, because if not, you're going to be looking for the same things next season. I don't want that to be the case. And let's hit this coming real quick. Devontae, you have to start Ridder at some point. 2023, if you don't get a D-line, absolutely. You can. I appreciate you getting this comment. We've been kind of talking about this as well throughout the show, that you do. I think that Mike has even said that it should be as possibly as early as next week against Pittsburgh, which I don't disagree with. Excuse me. Let me make that clear. I do agree with that. I wanted Ridder to start like 4 or 5 games ago. Y'all know me. Y'all know I've been on them throughout the season. But yeah, I do think at this point you got to start preparing this man to go out here and start. But Mike, if there's anything else you want to hit before we head off of here, man, we've been on here almost an hour, bro. You're mute.
Sorry about that, everybody. Disappointing game, really is. But as I look at the schedule, I'm just looking at the opportunities that we've missed, that Nate mentioned earlier. Most recently, the Chargers game didn't really show up against Carolina. This game, again, you got 5 games left. You got Pittsburgh at home, Saints on the road, at Baltimore. You don't really know what you're going to get out of Baltimore all the time, even though they're 7 and they win today.
No, they lost to the Jaguars.
So they're 7-4. They're still not gelling. So you don't really know what you're going to get out of them. You got Kyler Murray and the Cardinals. They can play as good as anybody. They can also play as bad as anybody. And then you end the season at Tampa. So really, I see it as a 4-game season right now. 4-game season, because if you're not within 1 game of Tampa in the end of the year, that final game doesn't matter anyways. So you got a 4-game season. Looking at it, honestly, I think they can win 4 out of 5, but they're just going to have to play their best ball of the game of the season, because I could also see, just as quick as I can see them winning 4 out of 5, I can see them losing 4 out of 5. So it's frustrating, but it is what it is. We had some bright spots today, but as I mentioned earlier, from here on out, it's a must win. Every game is must win. But I also don't want to say that without also stating that just because I'm saying every game is must win doesn't mean you can't put Desmond Ridder in the game. You're not putting him in the game and conceding the rest of the year. So I know people are going to be upset if that's the route they take, but you're not conceding the season because you're putting in your third round draft pick. You want to see what he has, but you're still going to try to win games. So don't take that out of context. I'm not saying that, but yeah, it's as you can tell by our body language, we're frustrated. That was a very demoralizing win. I'd rather get beat like we got beat by the Cowboys last year, like 40-0 or something, than that. Have an opportunity to win, doing the things that we're good at, and you deviate from it. It's frustrating, but hey, what you gonna do about it? We got Pittsburgh next week. We gotta move on and try to win a football game. And I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I love everything that you made a point on, and I do agree with Mike. Our body language says it all. We've been irritated the whole show, but we've made sure to come on here and give you guys a full, solid hour of great content, great conversation. But the reality is the Falcons have put themselves behind an 8 ball they shouldn't have had to put themselves behind. They've done it all season long, and now it's starting to get to the point where the Falcons are now one loss away from essentially the season being completely over. But you're in a division that is so bad, so it's not fully over. But again, it's an irritating loss. You're gonna have a game at home. Well, technically, let's go ahead and be real, Falcon fans. It's gonna be 60-40 Pittsburgh in that building that Sunday. And you're essentially gonna have to play a home game, a road game at home. So the circumstances is just gonna be interesting all around the board. I do agree. The Falcons did this to themselves. It is a frustrating situation because you've watched this season all season long. You've watched this team compete and have certain dumb losses that shouldn't have had to happen. But with that being said, this Falcon team, again, we'll be back here next week. It should be a Sunday evening show. It may be Monday, depending on how my voice is after the game. Because y'all do know I have season tickets, so my voice a lot of times be shot at the game. But until next time, this has been another episode of All In With Nate. As y'all know, my boy Mike does another great show with me, man. Y'all, hey, at this point, Mike will hear it and read with me. So, again, Mike, great job, man.
Yes, sir. As always, we bring our A game even when our Falcons don't.
And like you said, we bring our A game, and this has been another episode. Until next time, y'all enjoy the rest of your November. We'll be in December the next time we do the show, and rise up, I guess. I guess that's what we're going to say.
Peace.
Maybe rise up, possibly. Y'all have a good one.